everyone, it's Kristin, and today we're going to go back to working on our Bite My Palette collab with the beautiful Tiffany from Southern Gals Designs. Now I have to say, I'm having so much fun, not only using Tiffany's things and working with Tiffany, but also talking to and hearing from all of you. It has really added to this collaboration, so I thank you. And now we're going to go on to page 2 of our 3-page journal. But I will say, since this is such a small journal, as I've been thinking about it throughout the week, I realized that I'd really like for it to be one large project. In other words, although the pages will be separate, I want them to relate to each other. So that's the new goal, to have these journal pages complement one another so we have something that looks like a whole piece in the end. So we're going to do something in the center today, go a little bit more abstract, maybe add a little something to the cover or prepare something for the cover, and because I want it to be one whole project, I've decided to add something to this page that I think will really make a difference. So that's what's going on today. More play. And as always, thanks for coming along. Okay, let's begin by adjusting that first page. And as you can see, the first thing I'm doing is removing the pink embroidery thread that we added to it last week. I'll bring it back, but I really wanted to fortify it to include this gorgeous feather that Tiffany had provided already. I knew I wanted to use it somewhere. I didn't want to use it on the cover because I have a different idea for the cover, so I thought I'd add it to the first page at this point. And since we're adding it, why not include a little glitter? So I've just got a thin matte medium and I'm going to sprinkle it generously with some fine glitter by Martha Stewart. We're glittered up. And now I want to include tea bags as the main element in our center spread. Now I've been getting into teas lately, and it seems a shame to just throw these pretty tea bags away. So I've been collecting them, and I knew that there would be an opportunity where I could use them for something special. So I say this is it. Let's pull out those tea bags. As you can see, they've been unfolded, so I have a flat surface to add all of these beautiful papers to. I have 6 tea bags, so I'm rifling through the stash that Tiffany sent me, and I'll include 6 papers onto those tags. I'll just cut around them and fold them back into the tea bags that they once were. Here we have our 6 tea bags all dressed up with Tiffany's papers, and then we folded them back into their original shape. Now, before we move on, I want to address the inside, which is blank and staring at me. We want to make sure that the interior flap is as finished looking and complete as the exterior. So in order to do that, I'm just adding a little Reese liquid metal in gold to each of the 6 interior flaps. While we wait for those to dry, let's get started on the background. Now, I'm simply adding a little white gesso. I'll be using my fingers and this brush that was dirty from that gold liquid metal. It's okay. Adds to it, and we'll be using a similar technique that we did last week where I'm adding a little bit of Reese liquid watercolor ink with a bit of a shimmer to it to this background page. There it is. It's in a pretty blue color. It'll complement everything we've got going on that first page, not only in style but also in color. There, we have a base down. It's soft and pretty. Now let's grunge it up a bit. And I'm starting with the Stabilo All Pencil. This is water soluble. So if you wanted to, you could add a little water to the pencil tip before scribbling, or you can blend it in with your fingers after having done so. This is absolutely a la Tiffany. I am channeling you, Tiffany, with that and those little pencil scribbles. But now let's add fluorescent pink because it's fluorescent pink and I love it. And it's also a color that Tiffany loves and uses and was on some of the materials she gave me. So I'm simply doing the same thing that I intended to do with the first layer, and that is add more depth, add more dimension, and include the colors that I already have going on in the first page. Speaking of which, let's pull out the Jane Davenport watercolor palette again. This is in Brights, and the only thing I want out of this palette is that blue. It's a gorgeous blue. It has a slate quality to it, and it really is going to help knock back those bright colors that we already have going on in this center page. I love the pink. I want the pink to shine, but when you add a little bit of this deeper color to it, it's not really screaming at us. It's just kind of hanging out there in the background. And now to tie in the first page with the second page, I'm going to bring back those walnut ink crystals. Last week, I was a little overboard on them. I'm a little crazy. This week, I've learned my lesson, and I'm going to be a little bit more subtle with it. So I'm adding fewer sprinkles of those crystals and just including a little bit on the page. And you can already see how it's added warmth to what is otherwise a very cold color palette. So I love the warmth that it adds. I'm going to add a little more scribble, a little more glitter as we do, and we're almost done with the background of this center page. Keeping in mind this is one project, I've decided to add just a little bit of that pink that is prominent on the second page to the top corner of this first page. So that's all I'm doing here, adding a little bit of pink to the first page to match the second page. And then I'm going to take my favorite. This is the Jelly Roll white gel pen. My favorite is in the size 10. It simply means that it's a larger size tip, so you can cover a lot more space quickly. And although my fingers are hiding the doodles, that's all I'm doing. I'm adding a little bit of doodling to the top and the corner of the page, and then I'll go to the second page, our center, and add a little doodling there as well. Just a little piece of me on the page. And now that I have bright white doodling going on, I'm going to add to that by using more doodles with a glittering ink. It's a subtle touch, but I love it. And now let's add that pink back into the first page. Our glue is dry, our glitter has dried on the feather, so I'm simply taking pink embroidery thread, and this time I'm going to take that all the way up the spine, if you will, of that flap of fabric so that it will have something a little bit more solid that we can then attach the feather to. And I have to say, I love the way the feather looks. Thank you for the pretty feather, Tiffany. Back to the tea bags. The gold has dried, and now I'm going to start to reassemble them by adding a little glue to the outer edges. The only thing to note is that I am being careful with the amount of glue that I add because I don't want to ruin the integrity of that natural pocket. We will be using that later. So now they're done, I'm going to add them to each other. And what I mean by that is I'm attaching the flap of one to the back of the other tea bag and so on until I have a set of 3 tea bags that almost fold into each other accordion style. I'll then be able to attach that to that center string of the journal, and eventually I'll have 2 sets of elements that I can use to adhere more of Tiffany's beautiful papers to. have been waiting the entire time to use this particular piece of fabulousness, that's what I'm calling it, of Tiffany's on this project. And I don't even know what this is. It's a paper bag, obviously, and it's crumpled, so it's distressed and grungy and cool. But there's more to it than that. There has to be some masking tape involved. Something's going on because this has so much depth, I can't get enough of it. And these squares are 2 inches in length, so they're almost like working with twinchies here. So I'm using bits and bobs of Tiffany. As you can see, I've got some fabric scraps as well, and I'm attaching them to the squares just as I would with inchies or twinchies. And this part is so much fun. I got my grunge on, and I had a lot of fun adding bits and bobs of Tiffany's work to these 2-inch squares created by the tea bags. But now I need to add a little glitter. It's in my blood. So I'm going to add the same glitter that we have on the feather in the previous page. So we have some continuity. I'm pulling out my tried and true, that little circle punch, and I'm going to add those to the first flap of each of these trifolds. The first flap will not go anywhere. It's just going to act as a placeholder, so might as well be glittery too. Now, in the same way that I added the hot pink paint to the first page after using it on the second, I want to add some of these tissue paper pieces to the second page because I used them on the first. I also really like the way they break up that background. They add a little something extra, a little oomph. So let's add some oomph with tissue paper pieces and start to finish off the background of that center page. And now we get to fill the pockets. But before we do, I found the cutest little piece of text among the things that Tiffany sent me, so I'm adding that to the back of one of those trifold flaps. That'll be a secret little message later. But what will really be secret are the cards that I'll be putting in each of these little pockets. So you can see me auditioning them so I know exactly what size that I'll be cutting out. And I'm taking some of this beautiful bright white, it's probably watercolor paper, that Tiffany made pretty, and I'm adding those to the interior of the pockets. I'm going to also use some words to tell a further story to each of these squares. So in the end, when you pull out a little pocket, one by one, they'll start to tell the story. Well, the real truth is you'll be able to read the story at the end. Not to be a tease, but there you have it. So I'm putting all my little cards in their little pockets. And with that, our center spread is done. Full of grungy goodness, thanks to Tiffany. We're on to the last element that we'll be working with today. And as you can tell, I've just used a bowl to create an easy circle for myself. I'm cutting it out of that hard watercolor or cardstock paper so that I have a sturdy base to work with. Then I'm going to do the same. I'm creating a little cheat sheet for myself with a piece of copy paper and a ruler. You may be seeing what's happening here. Since we're doing a Bite My Palette collab, I thought it would be appropriate to add a palette to the front cover. So I've got my little triangle piece cut out. I only need the one, and I will use that to trace around papers in the stash from Tiffany. I do want to note that I did not cut the triangle pieces all the way to the edge. I left a little something hanging off the side. That way, when it comes time to gluing all of those pieces to the center circle, I'll be able to cut around the entire piece as a whole. And there we have it, the beginnings of a color wheel in Tiffany's palette. And now I have exactly 1 week to figure out a clever way to attach this to the front cover, as well as figuring out exactly how I'm going to conclude my part of this collab. But for now, I'm heading over to Tiffany's channel because I cannot wait to see what she does next. I'll see you next week.